been really honored to be a part of Alignable I've been on Alignable for a long time, but I really didn't start using it until probably January of last year. And it's just been it's a great place to be, a great place to network and meet people. I have a strong sales background. I've coached and managed sales teams over the years, and for about 20 years, I've been involved in sales. But I bring a lot of that to the entrepreneurial space. And one area where I think a lot of entrepreneurs fall down is in how they maximize their network. An alternative title to this, and you're going to hear me talk about it, is Fortunes in the Follow-Up. Because I do believe that we have an opportunity through smart connects and other methods to make new connections. And many of us spend so much time focusing on new connections that we really don't nurture our existing network. And it is an area where there's potential absolute pitfalls, but also potential massive growth if you successfully manage your follow-up strategy. But I know follow-up it's really frustrating. You know, I've been to countless number of networking events and been networking online, and you meet somebody, and in the moment, they seem really excited to meet you. You know, keep in mind that you've got their attention. They're not distracted by other things. They're there to network, but they seem excited. They even say, hey, you know what? When you get back, let's have another call. This sounds great. I'm super excited about this. And then they tell you that they might even have a project, a way for you to work together. Wow, this is looking really promising. But then you run into a situation where they say, you know what? I'm the decision maker. Wow, this is perfect. Not only do they have something for me, they like me, they're the decision maker. Man, this is going to be great. And then you go through the process of trying to do your outreach. And all of a sudden, they're not taking your calls. You feel like they're ghosting you and they're not answering your emails. Huh. Now, when you do talk to them, you find out, you know what, Paul, I'm going to have to run this by my team. I'm going to have to get some approval on this. Wait a minute. I thought you were the sole decision maker. Now you're not the decision maker? What's going on here? And then you get the message, you know what, we're really happy with our current supplier. Wow, this is not what I thought was going to come out of this relationship. And you run into a situation where you feel like you're wasting your time. But it's not a waste of time. It's just a frustrating process. And follow-up is not always easy. And there's so many people out there that don't follow up enough. And we know that there's a harsh reality that it takes, on average, 7 to 13 touch points to convert a prospect to a customer. And this is for a professional salesperson. These numbers, 80% of sales require 5 phone calls, meetings on average. Most people out there are giving up after 1 or 2. And if you're leveraging Smart Connects, I'm sure you've been guilty of it, as I have, where you think, well, I'll just make that next new connection, see how it goes. And you're chasing that new connection when really it's the people that you've already built relationships with that have expressed interest, that seemed excited for you before, if you find the right way of following up with them. You know, when we're networking, we have a captive audience, and a captive audience is engaged. And this is why we run into frustration. We meet somebody at an in-person event or at a Smart Connect or some sort of virtual networking, and they seem really interested in us. They really like what we have to say, because in the moment, we have their attention. Networking is a place where people are a captive audience. But another place that you can actually turn somebody into a captive audience is if you get on their calendar, schedule a meeting with them. This is why if you get somebody to schedule a Zoom call with you, in that moment, most likely they're going to be paying attention to you. And if you meet them in an in-person setting, it's even better because you can read their body language. You can pick up on body cues. You really can start to build a deep, better bond with somebody. I'll tell you what, I built some lifelong friends with people I've met at events and summits. Multi-day events are great. It's almost like a vacation. That person in that moment is a captive audience. They don't have the pressures of their boss yelling at them. They're not dealing with a spouse issue at home or family distractions. They don't have a lot of the pressures that they would have if they were back in the office. So when you're talking to them, they are glued to what you have to say, and it does seem at that time that they're a captive audience. But you can continue that relationship, and you can really take it further, because if they see value in your offering, once again, they're likely to take your call. They see you as somebody that they want to pay attention to. But there's another way, and I think this is one of the best ways. It's when we're seen as a resource. If they see us as something more than just a salesperson or something that more than just somebody that has something to offer them, and we can do things for them, we can serve them, we can help them become stronger and better at what they do, or we can provide value, then we can be seen as a resource. And that's another way of creating a captive audience. But many of us fall into this trap of thinking that, we're going to have a conversation, we're going to sell somebody something, we're going to move on. And some of us are in those transactional types of businesses. I personally am not in a transactional business. I don't see relationships as transactional. I think relationships require so much more. But we have to remember that first impression when we meet somebody at a networking event, or we meet them in a setting where they're really glued to what we have to say, it feels great. But first impressions can fade. And especially if they get back in a situation where they're distracted, they've got a million things on their plate, they've got pressure on them, and we're calling them, trying to sell them something. Now all of a sudden it's like that same person who seemed so glued to what we had to say now seems annoyed by us. So I think that one of the ways that we can overcome this is start to really build trust. Well, building trust comes in many ways. We can not only show them that we're the person we say that we are, we do what we say we're going to do, but how can we help them? Can we make referrals? Can we send them information that's not just marketing material, something that really helps give them value in their life? When we look at the efforts we're making in our follow-up, conversions really do tell the tale. If we start to track how many emails does it take before I can turn somebody into a client, how many meetings, how many proposals do I send out, how many do I get back? If we start to track this information, we can start to see what's working, and we can also start to see where we're seeing improvement, because often we're just treating business like a transaction and we're not necessarily tracking that information. But it all comes back to, I personally believe that if we're building relationships, it has to come from a personal standpoint. If it's transactional, it's not a relationship. That doesn't mean you can't have a transactional business and have successful relationships, but it takes a lot of effort. And a lot of times we're out there, we've got a message that we're in love with. And we want to tell them everything about our brand. And we're so excited about what we have to say. But is it what we're saying? Or quite frankly, is it how they're hearing it? Because those are two different things sometimes. Because what we're saying, we're talking about the features and benefits and all the great things we love about our product. And we're so married to what we have to say. We think we've got the best product. But that's not what they're listening for. That's not what they're hearing. We have a lot to say, and we think it's so important. But at the end of the day, they're not buying based off of features and benefits. Most of the times, they're buying off of an emotional decision. Fear, scarcity, happiness, fulfillment. They're buying from a place where they have a need, and that need needs to be fulfilled. They're not necessarily buying from a place where we're selling from. See, we often sell to emotions thinking, hey, we want to make them happy. But what if they're facing stress? They're facing fear. They're really facing doubt. They don't know how they're going to make payroll. They don't know how to keep their doors open. So we need to be speaking to the emotions that they're basically buying from. I do have a gift for you. And if you've not taken the S test, within Boss Academy, we work with Admanity, and Admanity provides some great solutions. And one of the things that they have is what's called the S test. So it's a 5-minute assessment. And this is actually going to be something that helps you on your emotional journey, how you connect better with clients, understanding your own brand archetype. So if you haven't taken the S test, go to admanity.com/Boss Academy. Write that down. Take that assessment. It's 5 minutes. And it is going to be so transformative. We use it in Boss Academy all the time, but it's a powerful tool. So when we're talking about emotion, and we're talking about how we connect with people, we have to meet them where they are. And I have some principles that I think really define the way that business should be run, the way that I've always tried to manage my business. And in Boss Academy, we really believe relationships are built on consistent, thoughtful communication. Without it, you're missing out. It's the follow-up. It's not just about checking in. It's about deepening relationships and truly uncovering where there's real opportunities. not just opportunities to sell, but opportunities to serve. When we're talking about sales, often it seems like we're in the right place at the right time. Did we catch them when they had a need? Wow, what opportune timing. And timing, does it really matter? Because if we're making ongoing check-ins and we're just doing it sporadically, we may not reach them when they have a need. And I hate to break it to you, most people are lazy with their buying decisions. When they have a need and you're not top of mind, they're going to go to the first thing that is top of mind, or maybe they're going to go out and do research. I don't know if you've ever had it, but I've had it happen to me where I felt I had such a great connection with somebody. I really felt like they loved what I was offering. And then they bought from my competitor. Why? Because my competitor happened to be there when they had a need. So we need to be continuing to do ongoing check-ins. But often the one thing I hear from people is, well, I don't know what to discuss. I don't always have something to say. There's a million reasons you can reach out. I was just talking to somebody today who she's in a B2C space, and she deals with people that are in a home health care situation. And one of the things that she said to me was that she just didn't know how to reach out and follow up with some of these people she hadn't talked to in a while. I said, listen, these are people dealing with a lot of pain. They're dealing with a lot of challenges. Why don't you just say, listen, I was looking through my notes and I remembered our last conversation and I just wanted to reach out and see how things are going. Now, that's not necessarily what I would say for every B2B situation, but in her case, it's a great way for her to just reach out and touch base. And another thing that she and I talked about is her sending some articles and some information that could support them. She deals with a lot of people that are dealing with dementia in their family. So maybe she could send some articles supporting that. We can always find ways to add value. And that's a big part of what sales is. Sales isn't just about transactions. It's about how do we add value? How do we show them that we're there to serve them? And we have to find ways to seize opportunities. I think personally that this is one of the biggest opportunities is if we find a way of serving and giving back, making a difference, making an impact, that pays off tenfold. I can count a million ways, and I'm going to share some examples of where I've helped other people, and that has come back and benefited me. But it's also important when we're meeting somebody in a networking environment, we have interest in selling them our services. And guess what? If they're in networking, they're probably interested in selling you their services. Do they know their role? Do they understand where they are in this relationship? Because if you're coming at them trying to get them to buy from you, and they think that this is an opportunity where they're going to find a way of getting you to buy their products, you might be at an impasse. So you really need to make sure they understand your true intentions. Because I think it's always important that we're forthright. What do we want? What are we hoping to accomplish? How do we serve them? And listen, one area that a lot of people fall down, especially if they're not trained salespeople, and there's trained salespeople that are not good at this, is looking for ways to close. Closing is not necessarily always about winning the business. Sometimes we close stages. It's like, okay, so I know that if I can close this first stage of the process, I can get them to take the application to join Boss Academy. Once they've gone through that application, I know they're really interested in what we have to do. Plus, I know they're a fit for our community. Now, maybe I take the conversation to a different place. Maybe there's deals that you're closing that are smaller, but the idea is you ultimately want to upsell them into something more. We always need to be looking for opportunities. And if you can't learn to close, that's a real challenge area for a lot of people that are not salespeople. Another principle, I do believe timing is everything. Strategic follow-up maximizes your presence without feeling intrusive. And it's about being there when there's a need, staying top of mind. You can let value and genuine interest truly guide the timing. So I said there's an alternative title to this presentation, and it's Fortunes in the Follow-Up. And as I stated at the beginning, when I talked about the fact that most salespeople don't follow up enough, most entrepreneurs don't follow up enough, most sales take multiple touches. The statistics say 7 to 13 out touches, which would be calls, sending a presentation, doing some sort of outreach. All those things are touches, and most people do not do enough. And there's some common mistakes that take place in following up. Being too transactional. If every time you call, it's about what you can do for them from a marketing standpoint, if everything is all about, hey, we've got this new feature in our brand we want to tell you about. Okay, that may be a great reason to call. But if every time your outreach is serving you and not serving them, well, that can actually work against you. Sometimes waiting too long to do outreach. If I meet somebody at a networking event and I wait 3 weeks to call them, they're not going to remember who I am. Or if they do, they may not remember the tone of the conversation. Inconsistent follow-up actually hurts us time and time again when dealing with trying to build relationships and sales. And I do believe there's an absolute difference between genuine connection and sales-focused communication. You need both. Obviously, you need to talk about your products and services, but there are other reasons you can reach out. You can reach out through sending somebody an article or some supporting video. Say, hey, I saw this. This is really interesting technology that's coming out. I thought you might be interested in this. You've given them a reason to see you as more than just a salesperson. I think there's 3 questions that we all always need to be thinking about. How do we stay top of mind? And we do it in a way that is credible and allows us to serve them. How do we gain credibility? Credibility comes from many ways. I mean, doing what we say we're going to do, honoring them, and then how do we provide value? Now, to me, I learned a great lesson in my early days as a salesperson. I had a boss that always instilled in me this idea, be a resource. That was the greatest way to provide value. How do I be a resource? Well, I'm going to tell you a couple of quick stories. So I had a gentleman who reached out to me one time, and it was a company that I wanted to do work with. I was in the market research space at the time, and I really wanted his business. They had a lot of projects going on. And he said, Paul, you know what? I'm really interested in meeting with you. I was living in Seattle. He was down in LA. And I said, you know what? I'm going to come down. I'll schedule a few days of meetings and I'll come down and see you. And so I scheduled a couple of days worth of meetings and flew down, had lunch with him. And we're sitting there and I'm excited. I'm prepared. Got all kinds of questions I want to ask him. He says, you know what, Paul? I may have misled you a little bit because I really don't have a project. And I was like, wow, what's going on here? He goes, to be honest with you, I've been with this company for a long time. I'm pretty frustrated and I'm looking to leave. I was wondering if you could help me out. I know you're really connected in the industry and I know you have a lot of people you could probably introduce me to. My first instinct was to be mad. I was like, really, this guy wasted my time? But then I remembered what my boss said, be a resource. And I said, okay, well, show me your resume. Let's look at it. He pulls it out and I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, I just had a conversation with somebody I'm good friends with that needs this guy. And so I made an introduction. Next thing I know, he gets an interview, he gets a job offer, he takes the job. He was with them for years. That guy followed me throughout my career and would send me leads and send people my way because he was very loyal to me because I chose to be a resource in that moment. I'll give you another example. So there was a company that I was also working in the market research space, which I was in some capacity for about 26 years. And this company had very large projects, but they didn't have the type of work that we normally would do with the company I was at, but occasionally. And those were massive projects. And so one time I met with them, no real opportunity. They told me they were happy with the current supplier and they had a pretty loyal relationship with them. But I stayed in touch and I reached out and I would send them articles I'd find. I would send them videos and things of that nature. And if I did ever reach out to them from a sales perspective, I always found ways of providing value to them. And one time I get a phone call and they asked me, say, hey, are you interested in coming down? We're going to be working on a big project and we think it's a perfect fit for your company. And I'm like, absolutely. So I scheduled some meetings around them, went down there, sitting in the conference room. And after the meeting, the president of the company says, come with me. I want to show you something. We walk in this office and he pulls out a file cabinet or pulls open the drawer on a file cabinet. And he points in there and goes, you recognize any of this stuff? And it was a pretty large folder of stuff that they'd printed that I'd sent them probably over maybe a 12-month period or more. And I started laughing. I said, oh, yeah. I said, that's stuff I sent you. He goes, yeah. He goes, you know what? Our founder actually wrote a book recently, and he referenced some of the articles you sent. We've used them for speaking engagements and other papers we've written. And nobody, Paul, does that. And not like you've done, because it's amazing. And so we really appreciate it. And that's why we want to make sure you had an opportunity to bid on this project. And I really think you have a chance of winning it. And I had it at the beginning of the project. It was a massive win that all came because I chose to be a resource, and I was patient, and I followed up the right way. If you're interested in ever finding a way of how do you research, how do you find articles, how do you find things you can share with somebody, one of the tools I use, I absolutely love it, is Google Alerts. It's free, and you simply go out to alerts.google.com, and there's a little form on there. All you do is you type in what you want your alert about. So let's say that you wanted it to do AI technology for copywriting. You put that in there, and it'll pull up a list of current articles. But if you create the alert, every time something gets published on that content, that type of content, it'll send you an email saying, hey, there's some new content on this, and it'll show you the listing of articles. And you can choose to send those on. You can share those with your clients. And what I'll do is I'll not just take the article, but I'll sometimes highlight points in there, and I'll say, hey, I saw this really cool article, and here's a couple points in there that I thought you would find interesting, so you don't have to read the whole thing. But if you choose to, it's attached. And I cannot count the number of times that has warranted somebody sending me a thank you message or a phone call back. It always pays to try and be a resource. But listen, no matter what you do, all your efforts in the world, sometimes you're going to face the old message. It's not you, it's me. We all hate rejection. Rejection is not fun. Nobody likes it. However, I have learned throughout my career. Now, I started in doing telephone surveys for the Gallup organization when I was in college. I learned rejection early on. I learned no is just a word. But I try and make no a game. And I think it's game time. Anytime I hear no, I know I'm closer to a yes. Now, that's only true because I track certain things. I track metrics, knowing that every no I receive is going to lead me closer to a yes. And if you don't have those metrics, you aren't tracking those things, no can be pretty hurtful. But I personally think rejection is a game. If you can make it fun, you can say, okay, you know what? I'm going to chase those no's because that's getting me closer to the yes. It makes it so much easier. But there's one area where I think so many people fall down and they get stressed out. It's like, well, I haven't heard her back. Silence is not rejection. Often we make assumptions that, gosh, we did everything. We sent them that bid, we gave them great pricing, and then now they're not responding. Well, what kind of pressures are they facing in their life? Maybe they've got a family member that's dying. Maybe they're facing something that is a massive distraction internally. Maybe they're under a lot of stress. We like to think we're a priority. And sometimes that silence is not rejection. And sometimes we're not a priority until we really are. And we have to remember that. Rejection is not personal. If somebody doesn't respond to you, it doesn't mean that they're saying no, but it means you need to do a better job of following up. You need to do your due diligence and continue to find ways to earn their trust. Because guess what? When it comes to your sales activity, you're in charge. They are not. However, often we let them be in charge when we start to take these things personally. It's like they didn't respond. They said no. Well, guess what? Business is hard sometimes, and if we want to earn the business, we want to grow the way that we think we really should be, we need to do the follow-up. We need to do all those things. So another thing to remember, rejection or silence, it truly does not define the outcome. It comes down to, is your follow-up strategy creating opportunities? It's a place where you can pivot, learn, and ultimately build resilience in the relationship building process. And I want to leave it with this. Just following up is not enough. I talked about a few things here. I talked about following up with providing value, building trust. Fortune may not just be in the follow-up, but fortune really is in the right type of follow-up. So it's time that we take some time to take action, just not transactions. So I do want to give a quick shout out and thank you to our sponsors. Boss Academy is a sponsor supported community. I mentioned Admanity. I gave you guys the link to take the Admanity assessment. If you didn't write it down before, it's admanity.com/Boss Academy. Master Book Builders, Merrill Research, Michelle Lee Coaching, Pro Video Pages, and then winningpressrelease.com. Thank you, Randy, so much for allowing me to do this presentation. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, but it's time for some questions.
Okay. Nice job, Paul, as always.
Thank you.
So can you put into the chat the link that you shared earlier on one of the slides for the test, if people wanted to take that?
Yeah, I can do that. I'm trying to get to the...
If you could, yeah, take your time.
Let me get out of this view. Oh, there we go.
And everybody, I'm getting a few questions on a recording. I will share a link to the recording either later today or tomorrow through email, as well as in Paul's group. And let me put a link in there. Paul is very active in his group, so please make sure to join his group. And the other thing is, while Paul's looking for that, you can at any time click the link at the banner at the top and schedule a consultation with Paul. So I will share the recording again. So let's take some questions when you get a chance. Let's pull that up on the screen.
You waiting for me?
Yeah.
What are you waiting for?
That slide. I wanted you to put the slide that has the link on it.
Oh, I already I put the link in the chat.
Yeah, I wanted to get the visuals just for everybody. If you could.
Oh, you want me to? I'm so sorry.
That's no worries.
Let me pull it back up.
You know, we're only on Wednesday, so.
Yeah, no. All right. Let me pull it
and
back
I will
up
add
here.
the link as well in the chat. But and can you explain the test just a little bit more?
Yeah, so Admanity is one of our sponsors, and we started working with them. Brian Gregory joined our mastermind community back in 2021. He started coming and sharing this amazing tool that he's created around helping you better emotionally connect with your buyers. And we use it for copywriting and developing content, but it's just an amazing free product that he has. If you join Boss Academy Mastermind Group, you actually get upgraded to their full brand attraction report, which is an amazing toolkit. But the free assessment gives you your brand archetype and really gives you some great insights on how you can better connect with your buyers on an emotional level, which is important because all buying decisions take place at an emotional level.
Okay, so just leave that up for one sec.
Of course.
And let me take a question for you. So how do you get to the decision maker and pass the gatekeeper?
Well, it really depends on the level of organization you're talking to. But, you know, if you're talking to a Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 company, gatekeepers get paid a lot of money to keep you out of the CEO's voicemail box. But I think it just takes persistence. You know, throughout the years, I have worked with a lot of companies and I've worked with a lot of salespeople that had to get through gatekeepers, and it just takes persistence. And if over time you can start to build a relationship with the gatekeeper, you can find out a lot of information. And one thing, if you're dealing with an organization that has staff and they're sizable, you can actually ask to speak to somebody in the sales department. In the sales department, why would you want to talk to a salesperson? Because salespeople, they love to help other salespeople, and they're an open book a lot of times. You can get a lot of insights and a lot of ideas when you're talking to other salespeople. So it does take persistence and time, and there's not a straight answer, but provide as much value as possible. And if you can get the gatekeeper on your side, a lot of times that's how you get through.
Totally. So what do you recommend for tracking conversions and relationships with people you network with?
Yeah, so there's a lot of CRM tools out there. I mean, I've throughout the years I've used Salesforce probably more than anything, Salesforce.com. But Zoho is a very nice, cost-effective tool. Go high level. Any CRM tool really allows you to track those conversions, and it's important that you have something that allows you to track some form of pipeline. Now with Salesforce, you have to pay a premium to track pipelines, but if you can start to build a little bit of metric tracking around your number of calls you make, number of emails you send, number of meetings you have, number of proposals you have, that's often enough data to give you a really clear answer of what's it taking to get conversions. And I'll tell you that if your efforts don't change, your message isn't really changing, you're not developing new products and offerings, often the metrics will hold true once you've gotten to a point where you're starting to see some patterns. So you know that now it's like, okay, it takes every 10 no's leads to a yes. That's probably going to stay fairly consistent over time unless there's some massive changes happening.
Yeah, and you can, if you're making these connections and networking on Alignable, go into your network. And we've got a new tool that we're rolling out soon, which we'll have a webinar on the 31st. So we'll go into that in detail.
Yeah, it's very
Okay.
exciting. Even what you showed me the other day, I'm really looking forward to leveraging that further.
Yeah. No, it's great. Okay. So is there an automated way that you use, and this kind of goes along the same thing, but an automated way to follow up with multiple contacts?
Man, that's a loaded question. I mean, I obviously
Email
use
marketing,
email
right?
marketing. I use Aweber is a tool that I really like. I think their delivery rate is phenomenal. It's one of the highest. What Constant Contact, obviously, Constant Contact is a powerful tool. So there's tools like that, but I really am a big believer that depending on the business, I mean, obviously automation is great, but we do need to make sure that we keep the sales process somewhat personal, at least in some fashion. You can use automation to send your follow-ups and keep people engaged, but if you're not doing the personal outreach at some point, that does work against you.
Okay, what are some good ways to, and this is a great question. What are some good ways to start a conversation with people at a networking event? How do you get quickly past that awkwardness?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had a uncle years ago when I was growing up that always was like just an amazing connector. He was somebody that walked in the room and he just had this magnetic personality that people wanted to meet him, but he was also a phenomenal storyteller. And over years, I've really put a lot of effort into becoming a better storyteller. But also, I have a program, and actually, I think our first webinar touched on that. Was it's called Askology, and it centers around the idea of how to ask better questions. Questions are the key to engagement. If we ask people questions, we capture their attention, we get them talking. So I have 4 different question types that I leverage through Askology, and it's investigative questions, it's instigating questions, it's empathy questions, and then it's leading questions. And with those 4 question types, a leading question allows you to lead the conversation where you want it to go. You know the answer, you probably know what they're going to say, but allows you to talk about your products and services in a powerful way. Whereas investigative questions, you probably don't know the answer to, but allows you to get them talking and uncover something about their business. So I leverage questions, I leverage stories, and quite frankly, I just feel like over the years I've become somebody who's really good at engaging people that I have no connection with. It takes practice.
Yeah, and people love to talk about themselves. So if
They
you
do.
ask an open-ended question, floodgates sometimes are open, and you can just build off of that.
Yeah, you just have to be careful that I still want to control where things are
Yeah.
going because let's say you're on a Smart Connect, you got 7 minutes. It's not a lot of time. And if you don't keep the conversation on track, you may not uncover whether they're somebody you really want to work with. And the same's true of them. So yeah, it's great to ask questions, get them talking, but make sure you do something to keep that conversation on track.
Okay, I was always told that selling was sleazy. How do we change the opinion of Millennium and Gen Z in this regard? Gen Zers.
Well, it's so funny over the years. I mean, like I said, I've coached international sales teams. I've coached salespeople, and this has been something that throughout my career has come up. This is why the word business development became like a title for the longest time. It's almost like we're trying to hide from the fact that we're in sales. Sales is itself is not a sleazy tactic. The old way of selling, which was hard closing, and a lot of the things that were tactics that were really fear mongering and all that. It's like, oh, you need this insurance plan. What are you going to do if little Tina, if you die tomorrow and little Tina's left alone? Those things left such a bad taste in people's mouths, and a lot of those practices have long gone by the wayside. Today, sales is more about engagement. The principle behind thinking sales is sleazy. I mean, there still are people out there that are hardcore salespeople, and you sometimes buy things that you feel like you were pressured into. Go buy a car, and you'll see what that means. But I don't know if the practice itself is sleazy. I think individuals maybe give it a bad name, but we have to understand that sales. If you look up the definition of marketing in the dictionary, go do yourself a favor after this and just type in marketing in merriam-webster.com. Look what comes up. Everything that marketing mentions is described as sales. It's about how we take a item that we have and we have to sell it to somebody that needs it in exchange for currency. So it's a mindset. I don't think sales is sleazy in its principle. I just think some people go about it the wrong way. But how do we convince people otherwise? Sell the right way, build relationships, build trust, give value, be a resource, and be somebody that stands out as different. Because I want to go up against sleazy salespeople, because I can tell you all day long, I'm going to look like a rock star to them, the people that I'm talking to, because they're going to get treated right. Long answer to your short question, but it's one that it's important. Just do it the right way. Be a better example.
What goes around comes around.
Yeah.
And with sales, it's not just selling, it's about creating a need.
Yeah. Filling a need.
Yeah. So another question, can you say the 4 types of questions again and give examples?
Absolutely. And at the end, you'll have a chance to connect with me, and I can send you the Askology. And in fact, I'll show you here in a minute where you can download it for free. But yes, the 4 question types are leading questions. Leading questions are ones you already know the answer to, most likely. You probably know what they're going to say, but with that answer, it allows you to talk about how you can serve them. Investigative questions are ones that you'd like to know the answer to, like what's your budget for this fiscal year? If you have that information, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, they've only got $10,000 in their budget, and I'm selling a $100,000 product. Probably not a fit. So investigative, empathy questions are ones where it allows you to really connect with them. How are those layoffs impacting the morale within your company? It's like, okay, there's a great empathy question. Now all of a sudden you're relating to something they're dealing with, and allows you to connect with them. And then instigating questions are ones where, man, how are you guys feeling when that last vendor screwed up that project? It sounds like they really dropped the ball. It's a tough question, and it's one that may actually sting a little bit, and not everybody should be asking empathy questions, or maybe not everyone is going to ask them well. But instigating questions are ones that really help you get to the root of great opportunity. Because if I know that a vendor screwed up something, that's an opportunity for me to come in and show them I can do it differently.
Okay, and let's get another. So we have time for a couple more questions, and some people are asking more personal about their particular type of industry business. So I'm going to recommend you reach out to Paul directly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And join his group. And I've shared the link. So I think just because when it's a particular industry, I don't want to alienate everybody else on the webinar. So let's talk about, can you discuss your preferred way to reach out to past clients, particularly those you haven't talked to in years?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mentioned it earlier. The woman that she's dealing with that very same thing. Now she's selling B2C and she's dealing with people that she knows that their families are dealing with health issues. So for her, it's real simple. She just can call them and say, "Hey, I was thinking of you. I was looking through some notes and I saw that, I was remembering our last conversation and I know you were working with somebody else, but I just wanted to see how you're doing. What's going on in your business, your life, and is everybody okay?" Allows her to reconnect in a very uh, pain-free way, in a very honest way, in a very uh, connected way. Those people are going to respond well to that. On the B2B side, you can do the same thing. So listen, we haven't talked in a while. Last time we spoke, and if you have notes, if you have your CRM, you can say, "Last time we spoke, I know that you were dealing with some investment issues. Did that ever get resolved?" It's like they're going to know that you care about them differently if you're reaching out from a long time ago and you actually know a little bit about the situation they were going through. Where you really run into problems is if I haven't talked to somebody in years and I just call them up and said, "Hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. We rolled out some new offerings and I wanted to see if you were interested in hearing more about it. You wanted to schedule a time to take you through a presentation." I'm not a big fan of that type of outreach. If somebody calls me that hasn't talked to me in years, they better start from a place where it's like they make me feel like they're calling me for a reason, and that it's like, oh, they were thinking of me. This is cool. This person actually, you know, thought enough of me to call and reach out. I mean, obviously they're calling to sell me. They have a business to run, but at least make me feel like you care about my needs.
A couple people are asking more about Boss Academy. What
Mm-hmm.
exactly is it? What do you do?
Yeah.
Membership. So why don't you take a few minutes to discuss that? I'll go on mute and then we can come back if there's any time left
Well,
for
sure.
questions.
Thank you. So, Boss Academy started in 2014. I hosted a radio show in Dallas that was called Boss Academy Radio. And happy to share the story another time about how I got the radio show because I was not from broadcasting. Some say I have a face for radio and a voice for radio. So, those two things, I guess, worked in my advantage. But the show was an amazing experience and it allowed me to connect with really incredible thought leaders. And at the time, I wasn't interested in podcasting. I loved the radio. It showed such, respect for the brand, and there was so many great things that came out of it. But over time, I realized that to really serve the entrepreneurial space well, at the time, BOSS stood for Business Ownership Success Strategies. I knew podcasting was a better platform. I had an opportunity to syndicate my show, but it was going to be expensive and it was going to take a long time. And I thought podcasting was a better move. So in 2017, I ended up on a top 10 business podcast list. I was very lucky. I had some amazing guests that came out of my radio career. I interviewed John Scully, the former CEO of Apple Computers, and had just some amazing people that really set my podcast off on the right note. So at the time, the show was going great. I loved it. I was serving entrepreneurs, but I was going through a divorce and my life was turned upside down a little bit. I wanted to focus on my kids and I made a really hard choice. I shut the show down and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew Boss Academy was very important. It was an important mission. Coming through the pandemic, I had a digital marketing agency that had taken a big hit because my clients were all very small. So between the divorce and a little bit of a struggling business at the time and dealing with being, a single parent, I really wasn't in the best frame of mind. So I wanted to get back in a mastermind group, and I had the opportunity to join a mastermind group I'd been a part of for years that I'd left. But there was things about it I just didn't really feel were really moving the needle. So I wanted to do something different. And a friend of mine and I were talking. He says, you talk about Boss Academy all the time and how important that is to you. Because why don't you relaunch that as a community? You always talked about doing that. And I said, you know what? You're right. And so I launched Boss Academy out of a personal need. I needed to get in a better frame of mind. I wanted to be around people that could help me move the needle. So I started hosting this weekly call, and the calls would happen, and I'd get done with the calls and go, gosh, did anybody get anything from that? I don't even know if that was any good. And next thing I know, I'm hearing about these collaborations, and people kept showing up, and they kept coming, and they're like, this has been amazing. It's changed my life. It's changed my business. It changed my life. It gave me my confidence back. I had moved away from a business that my sales coaching and consulting business. I'd left it because I felt like a hypocrite because I was teaching people to do something that I wasn't doing for myself. So I was able to come back to that. Boss Academy has been this transformative place, and our mastermind community, we meet on Fridays, and it's just every week. Great speakers or great topics of conversation, and the collaborations and friendships that have come from it have been amazing. And then the opportunity to form a partnership with Alignable, become a community partner, build something through Alignable has just opened so many new horizons. And now we're launching some new programs in alliance with Alignable, where we've got some of the sales training that we talked about today. We're offering a program where you can join monthly and actually participate as an Alignable member.